Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Kareem. How are you?
Not bad, sir. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Brilliant, brilliant. Listen, what an absolute honour to have you on the podcast.
Oh no, the pleasure's all mine.
It's I've been buzzing all morning actually for the opportunity to chat with you. So much I want to speak to you about.
Ask away, and then I'll ask about you. You'll ask about me. Maybe we come up with something half interesting in the process.
I don't know if my stories or experience will match up to yours, certainly, but I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all on the same trip, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know, it's funny you say that. When I spoke to you before the podcast this morning, you mentioned that you do intermittent fasting.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm actually observing Ramadan at the moment, so that hit home. Tell us a wee bit about that, actually, just to start us off.
I probably had gut and health issues all of my life, really. As a child, I was I was either running around, jumping off of buildings, or I was ill. You know, it was one of those. And boils and abscesses, and I had lots of ear problems as a child, and I had lots of operations, and as a result, couldn't box.
Okay.
Can't have a license to box because I haven't got any skull here behind my ear. You know, they chopped it out. You know, and that was all as a child. But I realise now I'm older, that's all to do with my gut problems. It's all to do with sugars and carbohydrates, and my body doesn't tolerate carbohydrates at all, really. So coming from an Irish stock, you know, or half Irish, you'd think I'd be great with potatoes and swede and mash and roast and all that. And whilst they're lovely, they just do me up, as do sugars and things like that. So a fungal sort of thing. So most recently, that's exhibited in like a reflux thing. I had a bit of grief in my life when my sister passed, and that seemed to make me very reactive. You know, my nervous system got really trashed by that. So every time I trained hard, I'd get like a fight or flight thing would happen. And then most recently with the pandemic and everything, I suppose stress levels are just a bit higher. I started getting this very bad acid reflux. So I went, and I've always been like this. There's always a cure, you know. So it just requires me to do stuff that most other people wouldn't do. So when I had my bad hips, I did cold baths all the time, fasted, did cold baths, all of that. And as a result, got through 15 years of pain without taking any pain killers at all, But it's about overcoming those obstacles. It's almost like we've all got the same obstacles, not exactly the same obstacles, but we all have obstacles. You know, our family, the broken leg, whatever. And it's about saying, okay, right, that's an obstacle, right? How do I get around it? How do I get over it? How do I get under it? How do I go through it? Most people give up, I think. Well, not most people, but quite a few people give up when they come up against a challenge. But I was challenged really early on, being the age of 8 and being in hospital for a month or two. So it made me. I've always been like Tigger anyway. I'm like Tigger. I'm bubbly. I'm like, let's go. And they go, where? I don't know where we're going, but we're going. It's like and I don't look back. I'm not, those people who are nostalgic. I'm a bit now. I'm 71, but not really. I'm just this way. And so with the reflux and stuff, which is based on bacterial overgrowth down here in the stomach, and fungals and things like that. I just thought, well, I needed to take control, and I was doing fasting occasionally, but that wasn't doing it. So I went on the intermittent fasting, and my sleep's much better. I was always a grazer, you know, eating late at night. So I don't eat after 8 o'clock, and I try to eat earlier if I can, which can be a struggle sometimes. I'm going, I'm really hungry now. No, you have to go to bed hungry. But I'm sleeping so much better, and I've never slept well. In probably 30 years. So when people see me out there on the circuit teaching and most of that I was doing on 3 or 4 hours a night, you know. So and sort of pain riddled. So it's good. It just, you know, makes you stoical, doesn't it? Makes you like, and also makes you like go, what do I have to do? So now I've given up coffee. I was having lots of chili stuff, which I love, and I had to give all of that up, all the spicy stuff, because that irritates all your gut. The histamine stuff like tomatoes, aubergines, potatoes, they're all high in histamine, so you can get quite reactive. You know, you take antihistamines for that.
Of course.
But also the joy of it is, once you're full, you're full.
Yeah.
You know, so your body, once you're full and your body goes, oh, okay, I'm happy now. So people say, oh no, I couldn't possibly live without my flat white and my Andaluvian satsumas, you know, and you go, shut the hell up. Of course you could, you know. Because we're inherently adaptable, aren't we? So well, look at you. You're doing what? 2 weeks, is it?
4 weeks.
So 4 weeks of not eating during the daylight hours, isn't it? That's a tough. It's good because it resets your gut, doesn't it? So all of this, I mean, without the religious context of it, it was a health thing, wasn't it? You know, people getting ill, and they say, no, if we do this every year, like you don't get ill. You reset your appetites, and like all appetites are huge, aren't they? You know, want more, hedonism, all that stuff. So a bit of discipline, not much, is good for you. You know, not too much, not like ultra strict, but just that dietary stuff I think is invaluable. I was very blessed when I was about 15. I was given a, excuse me, I'm dribbling here. I was given a book by Clement Stone, and Clement Stone did a book called Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude with Napoleon Hill, who you might have heard of, Think and Grow Rich. You know, Napoleon Hill was one of the first people to do self-help, and Clement Stone was a very good friend of his, and they did this book together, and I got given the book by him. You know, his book all underlined with his notes in the margin. Hang on.
No worries. Yep.
I think I know where it is. So as you can see, this is incredibly old. You know, it's like even the type was gone from the thingy. You can just about see it. But this was his book, so it'd have all the underlinings in. You know, this was his book that he gave me. Yeah,
you can't get better than that.
No. And what was great about that, at the age of 15, it was great because it was said. You can do whatever you want, you know. So there's different chapters, but one of the chapters is there's always a cure, you know. There's always a cure. You just have to go and find it. Whether it's going out in the desert and reading Rumi poetry for a month every year or whatever, but there's lots of stuff that we can do. So that was great for me, and that set me on, and still does. I mean, I actually give that book to people who are really down a hole. I say, read this, but I have to have it back because it's a precious thing. And I think it saved quite a few people's lives along the way. So it's so yeah, that's it. So I'm on a journey like everyone else, but my guts have never been healthy. One doctor said to me, you got a chronic dysfunctional gut. So what I'm trying to do is I eat very plainly, very simply, green salad, maybe tiny bit of tomato, and either fish or poultry generally.
How long do you fast for each day? How long do you fast for each day?
About 16 hours.
Fantastic.
So from 8 till 8, about 11.
Yeah.
In the morning. And I mean, I'm 71. Most of the guys I hang around with are about 40, 35 to 40. I train with them. They're probably a bit more spurky than I am, but not much. So I'm incredibly blessed.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that. The podcast I'm going to release tomorrow, which will be Saturday. I had a nutritionist on, and she was. This is so coincidental, but she was an expert in gut health.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that the very next podcast that I'm recording, we're having the same discussion. George St. Pierre, the mixed martial artist.
Yeah.
He suffered. He actually thought I heard him talking a couple of weeks back, and he actually thought at one stage before his last fight that he might have some sort of stomach cancer. It turned out that it was I can't actually remember the
celiac or Crohn's.
Yeah, it was very, very, very similar, and it was so bad that he was passing blood. He was in a real state, and the doctor said to him, "This is chronic. It's not going away." But he started fasting, and he says that it's completely night and day how it's changed his health.
I just took all carbohydrates out of my life. So for the last 30 years, mainly I've had no visible carbohydrate like pasta, potatoes. Sometimes at Christmas I'll have the potatoes. Yeah. But I pay for 2 weeks afterwards. Yeah. I have my potatoes on the one day and then bubble and squeak refry the next day. Yeah. And it's marvelous. I really enjoy it. But for a week or two afterwards, I'm not right. So taking all carbohydrates out, fasting's good. Plenty of water's really good. I mean, the Chinese say you're as healthy as your gut, you're as strong as your back, and you're as fit as your legs. Mm-hmm. So that's why the squatting is good, the hyperextensions are good, all the core exercises are good. But without a healthy gut, you've got nothing, haven't you? And I see the guys now, the BJJ guys, all popping ibuprofen, even doing it prophylactically, doing it before they train. Yeah. And you're going, it's really bad for your gut flora. And what you can get is, if you look inside your gut, you've got villi like this, so it goes up and down, and each of those has got little cactuses on it, basically. Yeah. With branches, and each of the branches has got branches on. So the surface area is huge. But what you can get with you taking ibuprofen and things like that, you can erode that. So it's flat. It's like a desert, isn't it? You're taking the bumps out. Yeah. So that means like your surface area of your absorption of minerals and all that is taken down. So you can't punch or kick or anything. Yeah. And I think lots of foolishness, which I did as well. Tequila slammers and having halal kebab at 6 a.m. But that's what you do, isn't it? It's part of the trip, really.
One of the things, the lady I spoke to, her name was Mary, and Mary was telling me that, and this one really surprised me, that the serotonin, so our happy hormone, they're actually discovering now that that's created in the gut also.
Yeah, that's correct.
As well as the brain and the gut. And when she said that, I was sort of scribbling away notes during the podcast as she was talking, and I went back to her and I was kind of let me just check that's what you said. And yeah, it absolutely was. That
well, the brain down here, the brain in your stomach is bigger than the brain up here.
Yeah.
So this is your second brain, but there's more nerve endings down here than there are up there.
Yeah.
And this idea that we're a brain with just these people are like serfs who will work for this overlord is completely misrepresenting it, isn't it? You know, you only have to look at, if you sit there after training and you cross your leg over and you look at your leg, and it's like a universe, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In that leg, and none of that's done from here. It's all auto regulating, blood, lymph, all that. I mean, it's incredible. It's like, what is that? Someone said, infinite that way, infinite that way. You know. So you know when in Star Wars where he goes, Anakin, the midichlorians in you are very high. You know, the midichlorian radians, and you think, well, the reason there aren't midichlorians yet is they haven't discovered them. You know, but they're getting smaller, aren't they? You know, subatomic particles and things like that, and the whole what do you call it? Thingy about where thought can influence.
Yeah.
You know? So trying to be happy, trying to be a good human being affects you as well as others, doesn't it? A smile is a big thing. So that's what I've tried to do for 50 odd years, is just to bring a smile on people's faces, give them confidence, teach them how to fight, but not really about, it's about fighting because I'm interested in that, but that's just the vehicle, isn't it?
Yeah.
For you, just like, to bring people up. You know, people are often like doubting of their own abilities and themselves. Well, we all are in certain areas.
Yeah, of course.
And it's quite nice. Someone says, "Come on up, it's easy. Come on, I'll help you. Like, place that foot there, and put that foot there. That's it. Up you come." Because it's great up here, so you want more people to come up.
Yeah.
You know? Because the party in the penthouse on your own, you know, isn't a party really, is it? It's, you know, you need all your mates there.
It's speaking to people like yourself, just with 50 years of martial arts experience, and what I've found is that the more experienced you are in martial arts, the less you actually talk about the punching and the kicking, and the more you talk about all of the stuff you've just said there about bringing people along, lifting people up, and the punching and the kicking becomes a means to an end.
Yeah, I remember a master Toddy saying, "The dog that barks doesn't bite."
Yeah.
You know? Beware the dog that, you know, doesn't bark. You know, and I'm not sure how true that is, but I think that's pretty true, isn't it? You know, like you see people going on about how tough they are and what tough people they are, and the day-to-day stuff is like, if you're George St. Pierre and you've got a bad gut, that's the biggest battle he's ever fighting.
Yeah.
And that's a battle that he fights on his own in his bedroom late at night, talking to the Grim Reaper who's come to talk to him.
Yeah.
And you going out against Joe Blow from Edgbaston and for 2 minutes or for 5 minutes, he's, in the scheme of things, pretty easy. You know? Not to say that doesn't teach you stuff that you can use later on, because it does. I mean, there's that thing about when you go out into competition. I say to all my black belts, look, you need to go into competition. Lots of them haven't, you know, mainly because there's not good competitions for them to go in, Taekwondo sort of competitions. There's plenty of them gone into the stick fighting and they've all done really well. But that thing of towing the line against a stranger, that's an interesting thing to do, because sometimes you're thinking, I want my mum. I want to go home. What am I doing here? What did I say? Yes. And other times you're like, yeah, come on then. And it's all of those, isn't it? And that's what makes you a bit more humble, a bit more human. Because I've had both. I've been like quite scathing about people. They can't fight here, you know. When I was in my 20s, I remember training it in Japan, and I could have trained with some marvelous people, Don Drager, people like that, you know. And I was like, yeah, it's a bit classical though, isn't it? I just want to fight people, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously I regret that now, although he was lovely. But it wasn't the right thing for me at that time. And then other times I've been scared stiff for a year. You know, I say that in seminars. I say, I came back from Japan hungry and all that. And for about a year, maybe 2 years, I was like scared, you know, deep in my, but I still turned up.
Yeah.
I turned up and trained, and I entered competitions, but I'd be thinking, what am I doing here? I'd be almost like apoplectic, you know. And if I got like a warning for hitting them too hard or something like that, I think, oh, good, I can go home now. And of course, that never happened. They all went, no, you can continue. He's okay. We picked him up. Right, off you go. But I fought the best I ever fought then. So knowing where fear is and all that, it's hugely interesting. But I think, the good people don't really talk about it. I remember seeing Terry O'Neill, who you know, who's like a legend. And honestly, he is. Oh, he's an old guy now, but in his day, he was just legendary. You know, on the streets, in the dojo, everywhere. Just and I remember we came out of a seminar, and there was like a disabled, you know, learning difficulties guy there. He was talking to me, and he went, "Oh, excuse me, Bobby, I just have to talk to this guy." So I was dumped, you know.
Yeah.
And he went over, and he was there for like a quarter of an hour to talk to this guy and just geeing him up, and I thought, wow. So I was quite happy to be dumped, and it was really like it was an education. I went, no, that's how to do it. This is a man who's like a real warrior, and he's got a gentle bit to him, which was lovely.
I've said that.
What's your own background?
Well, Taekwondo is well, I always say Taekwondo is the main thing I do. It's 99% of what I do.
Yeah.
To be honest, so we're based up in Scotland, maybe about half an hour from Glasgow.
Okay.
We're still under Grandmaster Cho, who
the old stuff.
Yeah. Aye. Yep.
Yeah, but the old stuff was that. I mean, I don't really know Taekwondo. I know. Is it Dave Oliver or something, or something?
Yeah, Dave Oliver. Yeah.
But I'm not really up in. But I love the original Korean hardcore stuff that they were doing with the rock troops, you know, where they were like bashing. It was very brutal back then, wasn't it? And that original Taekwondo, I thought was marvelous. You know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't like the flicky stuff.
Me neither.
But the original stuff was hard, you know, hardcore and very good, yeah. When it was like chuggy or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yep. Which came from karate. Which
it did come from karate, but they took it and they gave it that Korean sort of like toughness, didn't they? Because it's a tough place to live, really, isn't it?
Yep. I much rather. I'm sitting here with a legend of the martial arts, so I'm going to allow you to say that, because if I say that, I'm going to offend.
Yeah, no.
In Japanese practitioners.
Like everything, it's how you do it, isn't it? There's plenty of crap karate out there. We were once in Tokyo, walking along, and it was snowing. And Tokyo, when it's snowing, it's very like. Yeah, it was great. You know, it was early days, you know, and we're walking along, and then we saw this old building, one of those old sloped like this building, just in the center of a square. Everything else was up to date except for this building. And for me, so we're going, hey, on. and we walked in, and there's about 8 people there, and there was a young black belt there just teaching, and they were just doing front kicks, up, 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 and I went, that's a great school, because there was it was hard, it was intense, it was just, no, stuff has to be repped. Yeah, let's go, and it's got to be repped at a high standard, a high quality, and it's still, I get the tingles when I think about it. It was on one of those old oak floors, green oak, all bouncy, sort of a bit uneven. Up, and you thought, yeah, you'd be hard to stop, mate. It's good stuff.
I think we try and be too. I think lots of times I'll go in and teach class, and the kids are maybe a wee bit different, because you've got to mix things up with the kids. But the adults, that's still something that the adults look for. They don't want things too complicated all the time. Sometimes we think we have to do things we don't. So going into a class sometimes and just repetition after repetition, everybody leaves exhausted, and it's a fantastic way of training.
Yeah, it is. I think, like everything, it's like a bell curve, isn't it?
Yeah.
Up to here, it's great, and after that, it's just not doing you any good whatsoever. You know? And it's to know when you're at this point of the bell curve. So I like doing the reps.
Yeah.
But where I am now, after 54 years or so of doing this, I like to play. I like to play clinch a lot, and boxing into clinch and out again, because that's where I think real fights happen. And so that's a bit more technical. So you got to give people a vocabulary here: locking the elbow, coming in and bicep checking, grabbing the head, pushing them off, turning them. So there's quite a big vocabulary of stuff there. So you've got to do you have to do it quite technical. But then once you've got the technical, then you can go, come on in, let's push, pull. I've got you. That's the overhook. I've broken your arm. I've broken your arm again. I've grabbed your head. And so there's a bigger technical leap there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's harder to do for big groups. But I have a friend who's quite stressed at the moment. He's got some family stuff happening, dementia and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so for him, all he wants to do is go out and go, bab, knee, bab, knee, bab, knee. And I said, do you want to change to something else? No, he just wants to rep, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So I think you can't teach the other stuff until you've tired them out a bit, because they invent all of that day stuff. They can't take anything. Almost their pot's over full now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we, particularly with technology and the age that we live in, which is very fast, and have you done that? Have you done this? Oh, have you done right? Have you done your checklist? Because old Farmer Giles back in the day didn't have a checklist. He'd chew on his straw, wouldn't he, and go,
Yeah.
And I think to an extent the pandemic's been great, because it's reset us back a bit, almost like fasting does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You go, no, I've been going mad. It's unsustainable. That pace is unsustainable for your health. So I think slowing things down a bit, and as you said, just doing the reps. I mean, I've been doing a thing in the park with my friend Peter. Peter's an old friend of mine. He started training in 76, I think. He's still no good, but he's and he's a strength guy. He likes to apply strength to things. So I have to talk him out of that. I have to say, no. Look, you're doing this where you could be just doing this. And so it's very subtle. But with him, what we do is we just rep the same thing. So we go to the park and I go, and again, until he's got that bit. Because he can't do bit 2 until he's got this bit. And people might say, oh, that's very tame, because you're standing there doing locks or whatever. Well, he has to get that bit before I can put it on a moving base. And then once we want a moving base, then I need to punch him in the head whenever I can. So I interrupt, what he's doing.
Yeah.
So therefore, he has to know how to do it with it being, interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Or he needs to go, I'm going to give that up. I'm going to go back to hitting you, and I'm back on it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's there almost like constantly. So is that for the group people? No, it's probably not. But it's where I'm at, and it's what I love, because it's like it's the higher end of the art,
Yeah.
And so the majority of the students who come to me are black belts, or have done 30 years, and then they come, and I normally just go, no, just do this instead of that, and they go, I don't get hit anymore. I go, yeah, that's where I'm at now, But I'd love to go back like I used to. I used to lead some manic classes where we do like thousands of cat licks and then until you were dying, and then cat licks, come on, push ups, and come on, and you kill them all, and then they'd all spar each other till they killed each other. They all go home happy as they ever were, So, but that's more of a younger man's game. When you get to 71, I am now, I've done that. I've been there. I've done that, and now I want to take guys who can do that, but who are maybe a bit older. Excuse me, and a tiny bit older, and I just tweak them. I've got guys who've been on the doors for 30 years, and then they come and I tweak them, and they go, oh, you saved my life twice in the last year. I said, oh really? Yeah, big gang fight. They all had blades. I just did that, offset that guy, hit him, and things like that. You go, oh great. So that's where I'm at. So I'm more about taking people who have an established base, and taking them further. Although in truth, I'm quite happy teaching a beginner as well, because they're all people. They're all interesting, aren't they?
Well, this follows on from what you've been talking about there, and I want to run this by you before I actually want to talk about your journey as well. But so there's something I want to run past you, from you as someone who's been involved in martial arts for over 50 years now. It was Chris Credelli I spoke to about this, and he actually put it away that it was like a light bulb moment, or it made me think about things. So all of these classes where there's repetitions and belts and gradings and uniforms and like karate gis, like all this stuff, he said, in martial arts, what you do is you learn and then you forget. So all of that stuff serves a definite purpose. Moving from belt to belt, you need that. The patterns and katas, and the fact that we get a new uniform and all of this stuff. But then you're obviously at a place where you've got freedom. You've left all of that. All of that dropped off.
Well, I probably started that journey in about 1980. I met Dan in 1970. No, I moved on, no, even before that, about 76 maybe. So we started doing, the mid 70s. We started doing like adding grappling in, and then we changed from having a gi to having a t-shirt with, bottoms. And then I got to the point where I didn't want to have anything. I just wanted us to come and train. And obviously that wasn't as good financially as having belts, because people like that status and things. But when it's a bit like a passion, you just go, well, the truth is here, isn't it? It's like in Islam, isn't it? The truth is there. You can't go there. You have to go there, because that's where this is. So, so I just followed my heart really and did that. So I was never that bothered about grades and stuff. I remember, I think Nick Hughes, who was quite a famous bouncer type guy, Foreign Legion, you might have heard of him. I think he came to the club one night and then he wrote a thing in Fighting Arts saying that there's respect which is external, and there's some places that you go and the respect's all internal, whereas like they just go, you go, maybe, there's a bit of a nod, but it's not like the ritual where you go, Sensei domo arigato gozaimashita, and they like, which is like an external verification of it. It's more like, because I had a club which was incredibly respectful, really empathetic, but not a lot of outward trappings of that. But we were, I think, again, we were blessed because that was in the 80s and 90s. I was just blessed. I think it is because great people. Dan used to come in, Eric used to come in, so all that thing was starting to break down. But then I think people do like structure. People like structure.
I think they need it.
Yeah, they do, and you need it until you don't.
Yeah.
And you need it badly until you don't. Am I a blue belt yet?
Yeah.
No. How long to get to purple belt? Well, if you train hard, etc. Whereas if you're really on the path, you don't care, do you? You just, I don't care. I'm just turning up. And you probably need a bit of both of those. But I think it's great. I mean, I loved all the belts. Getting my black belt was great. Getting my second dan and third and fourth and was great. But then I realized, but I'm not as good as I could be. And then the belt fell away then.
Yeah.
Up to a point I wanted the belts because that would mean that I was a better fighter.
Yeah.
And then when I realized that wasn't going to make me a better fighter, and I got into boxing and I met guys who didn't have any belts, but they could knock me out. And I went, okay, there's other things out there, isn't there? But I think early on, people need reps and they need belts and they need hard training and they need high standards. So you've got to say, no, you think the standard's here, but the standard's actually up here. So come on, you have to be better. So I'm very particular about where people put their hands, how the fist is made, how the footwork. I go, come on. I mean, I was telling all the black belts off in the park this week, saying, bloody hell, what are you doing? How many times do I have to tell you this? So don't put your foot there, right, let's do it again, let's rep it again, bang, because you need to make it habitual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like everything, like getting up early, like fasting, like it needs to be a bit of a ritual, so you can't do it wrong. And that means, I think, doing the reps.
Okay, so to move on or move backwards in the story. My understanding of your journey is in two parts, I guess, and obviously you're the expert on you. But I was watching an interview with you the other day, actually, and see if I had to have you on this podcast just to talk about your journey in karate, it would be well worthwhile.
Yeah,
but you were talking in this interview about how after meeting Dan Inosanto, which obviously we're going to talk about as well, but just to pretty much change overnight to say, I'm leaving this behind. Yeah. And I think you were talking in the interview I was watching, you were talking about just how busy and successful your school was.
I had a huge school. I had 40 people in every class I did.
Yep.
And I met Dan and son and said, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're doing this. And my class went down to 8.
Right. So tell us, if you can, please, about your karate journey.
And okay. I started in 66.
Yep.
I've interrupted you.
That's okay. No, I was just going to say, it's never about being disrespectful to your karate journey.
No, it's great.
It's that there's so much interest in that change about how your path just completely went.
Well, I started in 66 I think maybe about September. It's hard to remember now, you know, because you go, was it 66 or 67? And you try and work it backwards and you can't. And was that April? I don't know. But a friend of mine called Keir, I think his name was Keir. He came in and he said, I do karate. And we were all doing karate at that time. We all the Odd Job was out, the James Bond films.
Yeah.
And the Modesty Blaze books, which I highly recommend if you want to understand Jeet Kune Do, because they were Jeet Kune Do before Jeet Kune Do. They're by Peter O'Donnell. They're still my favorite of those sort of books. They're a bit capery and, you know, they're of their time, but just the thought pattern, the combative thought patterns are Jeet Kune Do before Jeet Kune Do, yeah. And so we all, when we were in technical drawing, we break all the set squares with chops, you know, big pile of like wooden set squares outside the window where we'd all gone, we hold planks of wood up and chop them. You know, we were mad, yeah. And so he came and he said, I'm an AFQ2. And I said, what's an AFQ2? And then he said, well, come down. I train at the YMCA. So I went there and Tatsuo Suzuki was there, training on his own. And I looked at like, and it was like someone turning on a light bulb. He went, you know, he was doing a kata, doing Pinay Shodan, I think, you know, bam, 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 and he went, and I went, wow. And I had, at the time, I was having quite a lot of fights, you know.
Yeah.
And I needed something because I could fight, but I didn't have any skills. I could fight. I wasn't scared. Well, not scared, but I wasn't like timid. If it was a fight, I'd fight, you know. And I looked at him, I thought, wow, that's the answer to what I'm doing, yeah, because I hang around with gangs and things like that. And so I started, I understood then it was 8th Q, 2nd degree. So that's your first grade, AFQ2, you know. So I started there with all my friends. And we all started about 5 or 6 of us. Maybe even the end, 10 of us. They all dropped off.
Yeah.
And I was there, you know, it was slowly, by attrition. Some took a bit more longer. But they all dropped off and I was left. Yeah. And I remember there was a gang fight. Someone had been striped with a razor, and they were going up to sort it out, and they were all armed and tooled up, and the other side were all armed too. And it was my green belt grade, and they said, "Are you coming?" I went, "No, I'm training for green belt."
Yeah.
And I've got a girlfriend now, and she wants to meet me after training. And I was like, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, I was obsessed with karate. I want to get my psychic properly, and my psychic was probably quite good, but it wasn't good enough, you know. And I was obsessed by it, you know. It was like my whole day was thought, how do I get my psychic better, you know? And my green belt. So I did my green belt, and that was really the parting of the ways more at the start of it. And then on the Christmas Eve of that year, my best friend hit me over the head with a pint of Whitbread's Pale Ale, dancing with his girlfriend. And he was my best friend. And it really traumatized me, but it just made me split from that gang thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was into karate. Best thing he ever did for me.
Yeah.
I'd like to go and thank him now, you know, even though at the time I was really hurt, you know, and I almost lost an eye. It went down here, and as I flinched, it went past my eye, cut me on the jaw here and up through the lip, yeah. So it was a bit like that. It was a bit feral, you know, people were stabbing people and things. That was madness, you know. So I got out of that and did my green belt, and then my brown belt, and then when I was a green belt, I wanted to fight, and they said, "Oh no, you can't fight with your green belt. you have to be a black belt or maybe a brown belt to fight, because that's the only people allowed, because they're deadly.
Yeah.
And one night I was there and someone hadn't turned up to fight, and there was only a team. There was only 5 brown and black belts. There was 2 black belts and 3 brown belts, and they said to me, come on in you come, and I was in then, and I started fighting then.
Yeah.
And it was great. It just took me a different route. I met different people, traveled the world. So I did that and got my black belt in 1970. I got my second dan in 72, which is quite quick. And then I just started teaching. I think I opened my school in 1970, which back then was unheard of, to open a school as a white, Anglo-Saxon, half Irish man. It was Japanese teachers only, and I opened a school, and that did really well. It was cold, it was dirty, it was horrible, and we loved it, and I've still got friends from back then, who are still training, some advanced black belts, and so I did that, and then I entered lots of competitions. I fought for King's Cross, because I used to teach at King's Cross, which is in the beginning it was called Ravel's Karate Club, because it was annexed to Ravel's gym, and we trained in an old scout hall behind at the back of a building. Tatsuro, Suzuki, Shimizu, to Kamizawa. My favorites, Maida, Fuji, were excellent. Sakagami, who's around still, I think. But of them all, Fuji was like my favorite. He was all Japan champion, as was Maida, but he was just a gentleman. But he still beat you up, but very gently. But he was fabulous. And so I did that, and then I fought internationally. I fought nationally. I fought Terry O'Neill. I fought Tiki Donovan a few times. Dickie Wu. All the good. I didn't fight people who were on the same circuit as me at the time. It's strange. You go along, and you never meet them. His name, Eugene Codrington, I didn't fight because he was a bit younger than me. Different people. Who's Jeff Thompson's?
Peter
Constantine. Peter Constantine. I'd be fighting in this ring. Peter would be in the other ring. We never fought each other. And he was very good. He was very good back then. He was a great fighter back then. So we're all like that. And there was a little coterie of maybe 20 guys at the sort of the top there. 20, 25 guys who would always turn up, always dudes, always trouble. You wouldn't want to fight any of them. And I sort of was either in that or on the edge of that. So then I taught at King's Cross, because Ravel's moved over to the National College of Karate. There was a bit of a split where Tatsuro went off and went do it, and then we wanted to do our stuff. And so I was going to become the chief instructor then. And then they said, no, we need a Japanese. So they got Meiji in. And he, even though he had terrible technique, but he was just punch with his elbow, used to flip out like this. It drive me mad. But he was, he was good, and he was a hard trainer, and people wanted somebody like Japanese and hard. So I just opened my own club, and then just went off that way, and had a big school. As I said, I had 40 people a night. And then I started introducing music in, and that was really very novel then, but
Yep.
the girls liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The music, and that was, we were starting to change then. We were into boxing. I had some grappling friends who I used to grapple with. They were like white belts in my club, but they were like national judo champions,
Yeah,
and ex-amateur boxers. So they were great to have on the team. But so, like, there's 3 black belts and a white belt, and they didn't know the white belt was a killer, you know.
Yeah,
So, so we used to have a team of Pat Daly, who was ex-ABA finalist and Kinshiro Abe's top judo student.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a white belt, so we take him perhaps a green belt towards the end. Yeah. And he'd come out and he could kick really well because he liked to do 1,000 kicks a night and things like that. You know, he was a complete nutcase. And but he looked really nice. He had spectacles on, hello, like this. And he'd come out and he'd go, and then we had crazy Bob, who was had come out of some institution and was a little bit intense, yeah. So it was great. So we just let them loose on people. So it was great days, but we were always innovating, always going, what about if we take them down? People say, oh, you can't take them down because you could get your gi dirty. And we're going, well, who cares? We want to grapple. So I got into judo, into like Keisagatami and all that, and then, but in a dirty format, you know, we'd get in the Keisagatami and throw them in the eye and elbow them, smash their head on the floor and pick them up, you know. So did that, and then I was at home one day and I was having a telephone installed, and a guy came and he said, BT, and I said, oh yeah, come on in. And he said, oh, you're Bob Breen, aren't you? And at the time I was teaching a guy called Jeffrey Roth, and Jeffrey Roth was the original entrepreneur who founded Combat magazine.
All right. Well, yep.
Yeah. And I used to teach him. He came as a student, but he was always an entrepreneur. And we were in his car one day down in Maidenhead, where we lived, and I was reading Karate and Oriental Arts, and it was all about Ikebana and Tai Chi and a little bit about Wing Chun. But it was really invested quite heavily in calligraphy and Japanese culture. And I thought, well, we need something a bit more combative. I said, we want something about the combat art. So he came back the next week with a header for Combat magazine. So he was really, if you give him an idea, he'd execute it straight away. He's fantastic, because he came in, we used to have Taekwondo karate suits, which we'd get from an old Japanese guy down at South Kensington. The only place that you could get them, you walk in and go, yeah, what do you want? And you go, you've got a Taekwondo suit. You go, okay, come out the back. And that was it. It was the dark ages, and he said, oh, I can do these. Well, he came back, I don't know, a month later, and he had these ones which were almost as good as a Taekwondo and half the price. So he was a real entrepreneur. So I've been in the first episode of Combat because I was his teacher, but unfortunately I got usurped for the front cover by a guy called Bruce Lee, I think. Yeah, I think his name's Bruce Lee. Yeah, and so he was on the front cover because Enter the Dragon had come out at that time, so he was on the front with the gloves on and all that.
You have to give him that one. You have to give him that one.
Yeah, I think I can give him that one. Yeah, because his film, the film he did was better than any film I did. But anyway, so Jay came to fix the phones and said, "Well, I'm James Dobbin, and you're Bobby Breen, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah," because I suppose I was quite famous in that sort of regard. Not that I was ever particularly after that. And he said, "Well, I do a screamer." So I said, well, I'm interested in this because I was always interested in everything. And if you read the Modesty Blaze books, you can understand why. It's very cross-cultural, cross training, breaking the rules sort of approach. So I said, well, I'm really interested in eskrima. He said, well, come on down. So we went down, and then a little tiny hut, and there was 6 of us, maybe 7 of us, me, Ralph and Jones, who was my training partner, Bill Newman, René Toza, Bill, and Alan. I can't remember Alan's other name off the top of my head. So that was it, like 5 or 6 of us. And René Latoza, who's a very famous escrimador, yeah. So we just trained, and I did that for a while, and then, but meanwhile, even before that, I'd written to Dan and said, "Would you come to England, and teach?" Because I'd seen the stuff he'd done, and we were doing sort of the same stuff. Really, we were boxing and grappling, and I thought, it's going to be the same stuff, more or less. He might have a few tweaks because he's American, but he's not going to be, because we're at the edge. We're cutting edge, really. And I have the eskrima as well. Now I'm interested in that. And he came with Jeffrey Marder. I think someone told me it was September 1979. I never pay any attention to dates. I don't look back. So my recall of stuff back, I don't keep anything. All the certificates are either in a drawer or in the trash. Because I don't really care about them. And I've always been that. It's not I'm holier than holy. I just you are who you are, aren't you? And so he came with Jeffrey Marder, who of course he did the Born Identity films, all the fight scenes in there, loads of stuff, and it just blew me away. I thought, oh, God. And he could just go sticks, and you go, well, I'm not really interested in, and you go axes. Then he'd go pull a knife out, and he'd go, right, knife and axe, and then he'd go like, all right, you've disarmed the thing, right, now it's knife, now it's double knife, and then disarm that, and bam, and we're on the ground grappling, and it was arm bar, come out the arm bar, pull a knife out, and kick them away back, and it was like a tour de force. It was probably the best time I ever saw him. Him and Jeff were just in sync. He was what was Dan then, 35, something like that. They're just blinding, and I went, okay, that's it. I've just changed it overnight. So that was 1979. 1980, I chopped all my hair off because I had a little bit at the sides, just a little bit at the sides, and I went on a holiday to Ibiza with 2 girls, and they said, why don't you chop it all off? And I went, oh, okay then. And I came back thinking everyone would make a big fuss, and everyone went, hello, Bob. So it was.
That was it.
And so I've been like this ever since. It grows back a bit here and there, but not that much. I didn't have that much to start with. So I just changed. Everything changed. Like my hair changed, but also I just changed. I just went, no, this is the path. So I don't care about the financial implications of this. I'm on this. So I then became the host and the pioneer of Jeet Kune Do and Kali, as taught by Dan, and other people throughout Europe, really, because all the people that I got into me, I introduced to people in France, or introduced to people in Germany. So the Mike and I, I had Pentecost Paul over, Eric, BJJ as well. We sort of introduced. We had the first black belt BJJ in the UK, I think, was a seminar we did with Dan, and then we had Chris Houter coming over, who's one of the originals from the Machado branch. So that was in '96. So we had John Machado over and things like that. So I was always, if you look, there's an old newsletter somewhere out, and it goes, "Who's coming this 3 months?" It was Mikey Knight, then it's Dan in the centre, then it's Eric Paulson, then it's Pentecost Paul, then it's Chai Studio or whoever. It was like mad. And then we're getting doctors in. It was great.
Yeah. Before we talk about your transition into Jeet Kune Do, I always make the mistake of assuming that because I know people, everybody listening will know people.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk a wee bit about the relationship between Dan Inosanto and Bruce Lee for a start, because we're talking about someone who was a direct student of Bruce Lee. We're not talking about somebody who just...
Yeah, in fact, I'd even go so far as to say, excuse me. His hay fever's just started.
Mine's is just about to kick in.
Yeah. People say that Dan was Bruce Lee's student, but I'm not sure if Bruce would have developed Jeet Kune Do as a thing without Dan. I think really it was like because Dan had loads of experience here. If you looked at Dan's Kempo background, you look at because I saw Ed Park and when he came over with Benny Dad, Ron Marchini, all great fighters from America, fabulous fighters. Marchini punch you like so hard you break you, really good. And Natividad, fabulous Taekwondo, fabulous. And Urquidez just off the scale, just doing spinning like dragon sweeps on the floor and then coming up, but in fighting, not in demonstration, in competition. Go bab bab bab, high kick, and he go dragon sweep bomb, and he go like and then he come out and go bab 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 bomb, but just fantastic, unbelievable. Really, I mean, people don't appreciate how great he was back then. 1974, he was about 20 something.
Yeah.
He was absolutely off the charts. So I think Bruce was like this, and Dan is actually quite steady. Dan's like Dan will do the reps. Dan's a rep, or Bruce is like all this. So I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but I think from the stories that I've got is Bruce would have the idea and he'd just execute them all on Dan, and they work it all out. And Dan's lovely. I mean, Dan's I mean, Bruce, you have to give it to him. I mean, he was way ahead.
Yeah.
Way ahead. Yeah. I think mainly because he had to be ahead, didn't he? Big ego. In that small man type of way, very driven.
Yeah.
Very driven. And sometimes immigrants are more inspired to work than people who are residents, aren't they?
Yeah.
You see it because I know Dan a lot of Filipino background, but I know his niece Melody really, really well. We played jazz together, and well, she plays jazz well. I tinker at the edges, but she's exactly like Dan in that, like, I have to excel. So growing up, they were like, no, you can't get just an A, you have to get an A star. So that whole thing is that's driven through the the Inosanto family. You're here, you don't have a place, so you have to earn your place. And so Dan's, even now we can't keep up with him. Dan is 84 now. He's still doing 5 hours a day. Training with different people. So he's not saying, oh, I'm there. He's constantly learning, he's into culture. So I think that was probably more a symbiotic relationship. Obviously with Bruce as the instigator, because he was the man who wanted to go and do, but Dan doing lots of the the other work. Yeah, it would be interesting to find out, but I don't think you ever will. Because Dan's very humble, and he would say, "No, it's all Bruce."
Yeah.
But I think, like all those things, without one, you can't have the other. Yeah.
I think we always want to be. Sometimes it's just the right thing to just accept it for what it is. I think sometimes, for whatever reasons, even in martial arts, political reasons, history, we sometimes want, or no, it was this person, and then it was this person, and then it was this person.
Who cares?
Exactly.
We are where we are, aren't we? And I think also you get the thing of people going, "Oh, we need to keep it original." Well, what's original? It's like saying, there's enough problems in the world with people who want to go back to ancient times, where you could beat a woman, a dog, and a walnut tree. The more you beat them, the better they be.
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of unacceptable now, isn't it? Maybe it's true for the tree, but for the other two, not. So I don't even hold on to anything. Everything's changing and evolving, as it should, shouldn't it? Because it's because it's evolution, isn't it? And we need to evolve. And the same with what we're doing. Dogma is really easy, because that's the trouble with doing the reps thing and the belt thing, is you get dogma. So people don't think, they just repeat, And I remember once I got a job for 2 weeks in the post office. I had a girlfriend who wanted me to get a proper job. Parents wanted me to get a proper job. And in the absence of proper jobs, I decided that I just joined the post office. But I lasted 2 weeks, because they'd all turn their brain off, or at least in the place I was, because it was, they turned up, they didn't have to think. It was move this, do that, move that, and so I think dogma is a bit like that, and reps is a bit like that. So you need something that gets you to not be just turn your brain off. You need to be inspired as well. So it's hard, isn't it? It's a very hard balance. So you need the reps, and then you need to give them a question and say, right, how are you going to do that now? So you find here's 3 ways to do that. Find 2 more. You find 2 more now. Just spar it gently. They're not hard, but you find 2 more, because there's at least 2 more, or there's 12 there. But you don't tell them the other ones, because you need them. You need them engaged as well, because if you're just repping, it takes you so far. But then it's like the guys. I see the same thing with the guys who get into strength. They get into the kettlebells and body and plyometrics and things like that, and it's fabulous. I did all that. I did triathlon and all that, but without this added to that, they're like old dray horses, they're old like cart horses that you angle on them and they go, because their brain's not involved. So you need to train this, and it's finding the balance between the two. And just repping, which I love, is good, but you've got to, it's got to be like music, where you're playing with that person and you're not playing your thing like it's this is how I play it. It's a duality between the two of you. It's a dialogue. So you play and I step back there because he wants to do something, and I don't play anything, and I go in ding 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 ding.
One of the
I'm actually quite into oud music. I'm really into oud.
Brilliant
music. Yeah.
One of my favourite things to say, which certainly isn't mine, it's a well-known saying, is show your students where to look, but don't tell them what to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say that to my students all the time, and a lot of the time, some people will come back and they'll say, just tell us Just tell me. I have
Oh,
to put my hand
absolutely,
here.
absolutely. And I want to go and slap them because a very good friend of mine, we both got into CLAT,
Yep.
and we're doing CLAT and which I love. I can't do it as much now because of my hips. And we're both doing CLAT, and he was on the ground, and they said, okay, make your way up or get up. And he goes, which way? And they said, find your way.
Yeah.
And you're going, yeah, but which way would you like? And I went, no, find your way.
Yeah.
What does your body tell you to do now?
Yeah.
What's your instinct? So this drives me mad because then you're being passive and waiting to be told what to do. It's like Simon says, do this, and you don't want to be that because if you want to fight well, or if you want to interact in the world well, you can't be waiting for direction. You need to be auto-directing, and you can smell, you can feel, you can interpret stuff, can't you? So you need all these senses that you've got to interpret what's happening. So when they go to hit you, you just moved off. Oh, I'm just off of line. Oh, how unlucky, Oh, I was a bit too close now. Oh, a bit too far. Oh, my hands in your eyes. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Oh, I punched you again. Oh, really sorry about that. So it should feel you're ahead of it.
Yeah.
And so I like them to develop what they do. And the Kali is quite good because they use a triangle a lot. So they say, see one, do one, teach one.
Okay. Yeah.
That means you have to see one, you have to do it 1,000 times,
Yeah.
but then you have to teach it. And in the act of teaching it, people go, what about if I do this? And you go, oh, actually, I don't know the answer for that. So now when you go around this again 50,000 times, you know it, and then you sort of you don't have to have that anymore.
Yeah.
The structure disappears, So you need but you need to see it and watch other people doing it as well. Because if you're only doing it, you only get one side of the picture, don't you? When you see other people
drawing that at the moment.
Yeah. So they're very good on that. They got other ones are observe, receive, deliver. So you look at it, you get it happen to you, you are the nail, and then you're the hammer.
Yeah.
And then you've got that thing. And if I can remember training with Higan Machado, and Higan Machado would sit on a ball and just watch. And he rolled around on this Swiss ball, and he just look at every class, beginners classes, everything.
Yeah.
Just watching. And then I was on the ground with him, and he went, first, my friend, he said, you have to be the nail. Later on, you can become the hammer.
Yeah.
And I went, well, I'm definitely the nail. And I think that's it. That's it exactly, isn't it? Observe, receive, deliver. The other one is warrior, scholar, guru.
Okay.
Which is fabulous, because I think without the warrior bit, the scholar bit is insubstantial, because you need to be able to stand your ground.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe intellectually, like Christopher Hitchens or someone like that.
Yeah.
Who's very fighter-like,
Yeah.
But you need the warrior and the scholar, so you need the both, and then the guru, and you need that enlightenment of letting go of stuff, learning stuff, but not being attached to it, and then you're more, So they've got some great things like that, which you just think, just those. I mean, if you just do those every day.
Yeah. Tell us, and again, this next question could probably fill a podcast on its own, but if you can draw it in, what is Jeet Kune Do? What is it? Is it a style? Is it a thought pattern? Is it a system?
Well, do you know what? I don't really fuss about it a lot. I call what I do Jeet Kune Do, but I don't really care. You can call it Bing Bang Bong. It's me. People like the title of Jeet Kune Do because it comes from Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not being. I think lots of Bruce's ideas are extant, you know, within that, are used within that, in that, you know, research your own experience, you know, because your own experience is all you really have, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where do you end up all the time? What are your reference points? You know, because lots of the original Jung fan would have a reference point for the trapping. So you say, right, my hands are like this, my hands are like this, my hands are like that, you know?
Yeah.
And we've joined, right, and then I can do, you know, so you've got places to start from. So obviously you need to do like your basic punching and kicking, and then you need to spar a little bit and go, oh, I always end up there. Oh, I always end up there. Right. So that's your garden to harvest, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know? So it's about freedom, I think, for me, and not being attached to formality, not being attached to dogma, and I'm free. So if I want to jump in the air and jump off the cage and come down and hit you, then that's great. That's, even though you're thinking out of the box, I think of it more, you know, for me personally, it's more like the Sun Tzu. There's a really good audio version of that by the Denma Collective, I think. I think that's the right term for it. And I want to be principle based, not technique based.
Yeah.
You know? And those are systems are technique based, and most of the stuff I teach is principle based. So I'm going, no, why would you do that when this hand's closer? So give a half beat with this, and then, so suppose I blocked you like this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to come with this hand. You can see this hand.
Yeah.
So I just go, oh, hang on. And then that hand's gone, isn't it? Because I've just hit you in the eye with this. And then that, so I use half beats, or I change their structure a lot. So I use a mix of Pan and Tukan principles. Not all. And again, I call what I do 4D combat because I wanted to make it. I had this light bulb road to Damascus thing happen. I was in Italy, and I was 60 something, you know, and I went, what am I offering? You know, how can I help to move it forwards? You know, and I thought, well, you can't do all this. We're promising something which we can't deliver, particularly in JKD and Kali, you know, in that you can be the master of the 12 weapons systems, and that all of it uses the same principles. Well, lots of it does, but you can't have everything, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, so in a basket of inessentials and essentials, what are the essentials that I've learned from my own experience? So I said, well, all fights start standing up.
Yep. Yep.
All fights start standing up. I don't think I've ever seen a fight start sitting down. If they're sitting down, they stand up and then it starts. You know, one person might be sitting down, but one person definitely standing up. So I thought, right, they all stand up. And I thought, well, how many fights end on the ground? And the Gracies would have you believe that 90% end on the ground. But apparently that's a statistic derived from police arrest statistics. So it's totally untrue.
I always did doubt that one. I'm not going to lie.
And what they've done, they said 14% end up on the ground.
Yeah.
Because they did film. They just studied loads of street fights. And they said only 14% ended on the ground with both opponents on the ground.
Yeah.
And of those, only 7% of them were where you could use an executable technique. So dispensing with that, because that might be true, that's somebody else's stats. If you say it's an 80-20 thing, like the standard Pareto principle, you know, 20% of the stuff you do gives you 80% of the results. Yeah.
Yeah.
80% of fighting is stand up. So I need to be concentrating on this 80%, where that's and then working my 20% on it. So I say again, you can't have 80%. So what can I do? How do I simplify everything down? So what I did for me, using the JKD mindset, I said, I want to use the same thing everywhere. Everywhere. So I don't have to think. Because the biggest thing, when you're getting punched in the face, you can't think. So it's got to be instinctive. I thought, well, what are the 5 instincts that you have? Striking, clinching, weapons. Fight, flight, fence. So you start with fence. Almost everyone starts with fence. Yep. Then you come in, or you go in, or you're covering.
Yep.
Like this. Sometimes like this, or you're trying to grab hold of them. You're trying to clinch. Yeah. So those are your 5 instincts that everyone has on the planet, because they had loads of fights. So I could tell. I said, no, there's only those 5 instincts. People say, oh, yeah, I think I tongue sell. Yeah, well, that's fence, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a different way of fence. It might be your hand might be a different way, but it's fence.
Yep.
What Jeff Thompson calls fence, and I call box, because it's like a box.
Yeah.
So I said, so there's only 5 instincts. So I'm either going to come, or I'm going to go, or I'm going to be in the box, and I can invade in that box as well. And I can go left and right, obviously. Yep. And then I'm going to cover, which is like what Andy Norman does so really incredibly well.
Yeah.
That whole system is based on this sort of stuff. Yeah. And this sort of stuff. It's great, because he's just covering. He's taken that one instinct and turned it in and polished it.
Yeah.
And then clinch, and obviously clinch is like MMA clinch, CSW clinch, and then you got judo for that, but you need to clinch first, don't you?
Yeah.
Without getting punched in the head. So I said, well, there's only those 5 instincts. So how do I get one template that sorts all that out? And I use the same template everywhere. Yeah. And so for us, it was like striking, clinching, weapons, group attack. 5. Striking, clipping, weapons, group attack. 4 dimensions. I'm thinking of the other 5 instincts.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah? So there's only 4 dimensions. So what about if I develop a system which all those 4 are the same, more or less, or I see them in my head, more or less the same. So for me, that was how I teach Taekwondo, because now what I can do is, whether you go 1 pack, or you do pack sal here, or you do shoulder roll here, I just put it in. Yeah. Oh, that's all box. That's all box. Yeah. If I clinch you and I put my hands on your biceps, that's box. I'm still doing box. Yeah, I'm just doing it. I clinch it. Now I'm doing it parrying or shielding. Then I can cover, and I can clinch. So I said, well, let's do the same stuff everywhere. So that's what we did. We Taekwondo'd it, really. We did what Bruce would have done. Just said, got to be simpler, because his thing was always simple, direct, and effective. Yeah. That's the prime directive, if there is one. So simplicity was the thing, and so I called it 4D combat, but it's Taekwondo and Kali. It's like a blend of those 2, and as a result, I get the stuff to work. The stuff that people do in demos, but they never use in sparring. Mm-hmm. That stuff where they go, oh yeah, I like to do this, and I do an up chuggy here, and I do that, and I come and I tip to and Troy here, and then when they fight, they're like this. All the stuff I do, I use all the time. Yeah, I use it in clinch, I use it in fighting, I even use it in stick and blade work, because it's the same thing.
it's so interesting to hear you talk about being in a place where it's implementing principles as opposed to just implementing one set of techniques.
Yeah.
So, my karate is better than your taekwondo, and my taekwondo is better than your judo.
Well, there's still that thing of a single direct attack is great, isn't it? That isn't to deny that. I mean, I fought Tadayuki Maeda in a competition, and I was really good then. Yeah. But he was all Japan champion, and I wasn't fearful of him. I thought, no, I'm out to beat him. Yeah. But he front kicked me. I never saw it at all. It was such a good front kick, and hit me in the armpit here. Yeah. But I was just going to go to jab and just boom. I never even saw that. And then he gave me another one. I blocked, but I didn't want to block. It was so hard. Yeah. Yeah. And he had really just simple direct attack. So it's not to say that doesn't work, but you need a principle-based thing where you can look at that. I don't think he'd hit me now.
Yeah. I think I was getting back. I know we mentioned George St. Pierre at the beginning of the podcast, but he was talking about Bruce Lee recently, and then I was actually talking to my wife about it after I'd listened, and we were discussing this about my wife also trains, and there's always this debate about, how would Bruce Lee do in mixed martial arts now, and who's the all-time greatest, and all of these debates. And what George St. Pierre said, which really actually resonated with me, was that I think where Bruce Lee was definitely ahead was his principle, was his
his thinking.
Thinking, yeah. And it frustrates me that we see so many people. We do it, and when I say this, I mean a tiny, tiny little bit of groundwork in our Taekwondo curriculum. Now, if you go back to the older encyclopedias of Taekwondo, there's locks and throws and all of that included. But you'll get people that will say to you, still to this day, and this drives me crazy, and I'm sitting here talking to someone who understands this better than anybody. Oh no, there's no groundwork in Taekwondo. So what you're saying is, if I train for 30 years in Taekwondo and I end up in the ground, my martial art's useless.
And how much do you need on the ground, really? You need to be able to get up.
Yep. Yeah.
I had a fight, a boxing match. It was kicking off everywhere. And a guy peed in front of the girls. We were there with girls. Yep. And he just turned around and two guys just had a pee. Yep. And my friend went down and went, wait, that's not on. A big fight. Anyway, I pulled one of the guys off of him. And because it was terracing, it was in a football stadium, went back and we both tripped over. So I was older, I had bad hips at the time. So he went to get up, I gave him a little tug. No, hang on, mate. Let me get up at the same time as you. As he got up, I just left hooked him. Yeah. He just disappeared. I never saw him. He came back about 10 minutes later with blood all coming down his face. Yeah. But all you need to do is be able to get up. And again, it's an 80-20. How much do you need to stop someone from doing their stuff? If you got Roger Gracie and, you start biting him, that changes a load of. So you just need enough to not be foolish, isn't it? You couldn't beat him. He destroy you, but he's not the normal bloke, is he? Yeah. And then you get people who say, "Oh no, BJJ's everything." I heard Jocko Willink, one of those guys, saying, "Oh, for Navy SEALs, BJJ's the best thing." I thought it's rubbish. So you're on the ground while armed opponents are around you, grappling with one person. Yeah. Stand up's the only place to be, isn't it? That's why God took us from being on our fronts, on our backs, then turned us on our fronts, then we got up onto all fours, then we stood up. Yeah. So there's an evolution. You're on your back first, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. Like this. Then when you get a bit better, you start crawling around on all fours. Then you hold on to things and stand up. Then you stand up, and you never even go back down again because your mobility is compromised. You know, just utter nonsense. Not to say you shouldn't know how to grapple.
Yeah.
But where the Silat's quite good is their emphasis on getting up again.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So go down, but don't stay down there for half an hour going, oh yeah, I put Juji Gatami on him, I did a reverse omoplata, while the other guy's kicking you in the head.
Yeah.
So obviously it's all templates, isn't it? So what is your template? If you're talking about fights out there in the street, then groundwork is the worst place to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I do a class. I say, okay, guys, I want you to go from this side of the dojo to that side of the dojo on your backs. Now you can go on all fours. Now you can hop on one foot, and now you can run. Which would you like to do at the end once they've done all this? They go, oh, they were all terrible except for the last one. I said, so, okay, so your job is to put them on one foot all the time.
Yeah.
I drag them so their balance is they're loaded too much on one foot or on another foot. So they're never able to execute their power clean or their deadlift. You know, I've always got them twisted or somewhere like that. So that's game number one. Then if I can, I want to put them so they've got a hand on the floor. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. If possible, 2 hands on the floor. If even better, I want to turn them over on their stomach so their underbelly is free for me to stomp.
Yeah.
Because you go, oh yeah, he's going to come in and why would I do that when I can stomp your liver? I stomp your liver twice, you're not getting up, yeah? Or stomp your groin once, yeah? So BJJ is fabulous, and I'm not decrying it because I was one of the first to bring it in, and I love it, and I still train with people who do that, you know. I got Sangaku for an hour by 2 different black belts last year. Going, no, isn't tight enough. No, put it on. I was 70, yeah. And I was being uki willingly, because I wanted to be, again, like you need to be the hammer and the nail, isn't it? And if you're the nail, you understand it better, yeah. Anyway, so principle based, I teach all my guys. So we're doing clinch. I say, okay, are you doing clinch here, or are you doing clinch here? In that I'm doing clinch you, but now I'm using you to offset the next person who's going to come. See what I mean? So say I'm putting you in a wrist lock here. Well, where I move when I do the wrist lock depends on who the next opponent is. So even if there isn't a next opponent, I can move. So I'm thinking there's a next opponent.
Yeah.
And then what happens is I've delegated responsibility for the wrist lock to my hands. So I become the general. You know, so if you think there's the trooper who's just doing the stuff.
Yep.
Inches, yeah. And then there's the captain who's like organizing the unit to move around. And then there's the general looking at the battlefield as a whole, isn't it? And what Bruce Lee was, I think, was a general. He looked at it really, oh no, he has to come there. That's his strong leg. So I'm going to offset him by doing this. I'm going to do that. He just out thought them.
Yeah.
You know, because grit and grunt only takes you that far. You know, because if it took you everywhere, then the Americans would have beaten the Vietnamese and the Taliban, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Spot on.
So strategy beat them twice.
Yeah.
You know, because they go, we going to put more firepower there. Yeah, but we just keep coming back, or we kill these people, you know?
Yeah.
Or we take out your top people. So
tell us a wee bit about just to sort of, again, we're going to move in a different direction now, if we can. You've done a wee bit of work on movies as well, didn't you?
Yeah, bits, just little bits. I'm on the edges,
right?
I'm really am on the edges. In that, say there's an actor who's going to go for something in Hollywood, and he's in England, or he's an English actor, and he's prepping, then I'll prep them for a film. Yeah,
Brilliant.
Which means I might get them for 2 weeks, and I can train them 3 or 4 times a week in that 2 weeks. It never works out like that. It always changing because it's film. It's just changing all the time. So I originally taught a couple of the guys for 300.
Yep, brilliant. Amazing movie.
Michael Fassbender and Tom, I can't remember Tom's other name. Tom's the one who gets his head chopped off. Yeah.
You didn't pay for that, obviously.
Yeah. And so basically all you've got time to do is give them the look, saying, no, look, of being a predator, so I get them for 300. It's more about swinging sticks, but again, no, not here like an actor, but here like a bow, come on, fucking hit me, and then hit me, come on, and just getting them like they're coming, so their body language is very predatory. So that's what I did more recently, and then I taught Ed Skrein for Deadpool. So we did lots of axe stuff, and as he had to have a fire extinguisher that he fought with, and things like that. So we did lots of work with the tie pads and a big stick and hitting hard and getting him to look. Well, he's a great athlete. I mean, I haven't seen him anything recently, but he's a fabulous athlete and a really pleasant guy. Vasbender's got great energy. He's like a mad Irishman. He comes in and he's got he has it. He's got charisma. He always plays this quite aloof Englishman on stage, but when you see him, he's like a wild Irishman. Then I taught Lena Headey, who was Game of Thrones Queen Cersei. Used to go over to her house and train her for something that's not out yet, and which I can't say anything about.
That's okay.
And then Robert Pattinson, I've taught him as well.
Fantastic.
Something that's not out yet. That's all I can really say about that one. But he's lovely. Both of them. Lena's lovely. Madly. She's absolutely lovely. Passionate about social things and things like that. She's really, but as a person, she's just absolutely lovely. Really, really, really great and a good athlete. And nice.
I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. So Robert Pattinson, who's the new Batman?
So they say.
Okay, cool. Right, okay. Bob, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I've had an amazing time chatting with you. One last thing I want to talk about is life lessons, because I think, and I think I mentioned this earlier in the podcast as well, I think that people like yourself, you so much experience in martial arts, and you end up being in a place where you're not talking about techniques anymore, but you're talking about life and about life lessons. And how to treat people and just the sort of stuff we should be doing.
I think lots of it's about love, really. Love. I mean, I know it sounds like wishy-washy maybe, but if you want to get far in life, you've got to love people, and you've got to love life, and you've got to love, and you've got to give love, then you get love back, and you've got to help people up the hill, and you've got to love yourself, not always abuse yourself. I've done loads of abusing. I did all the mad stuff, triathlon and things like that, and I think that's really important. And also, we're only here for a time, isn't it? So you want to be the best person you can be, and extremism is on the rise everywhere, and polarities on the rise everywhere, and you got to be a bit more easygoing and don't get caught up in it, because you're being manipulated by other people. So don't be manipulated. Calm down. It's not. I'm really quite anti-conspiracy theories, because I think I heard a policeman say, "Yeah," he said, "the best conspiracies are 3 people, where 2 of them are dead." Because then you can say, "Oh, well, that they did it." You can't get 3 people to agree. It's like herding cats, isn't it? Yeah. So the idea that there's vast conspiracies to do things, I think the world's an amazing place. As the pandemic's taught us, we're the biggest threat to it. So live a bit lighter, keep your humility. Most importantly, just turn up, and people on the whole are nicer. If I want to learn something, I just phone the head bloke up. Really, I phone whoever's like the top person, and they go, "No, you can't phone him up." And I go, "I can try," And 9 times out of 10, they answer you back, particularly because I'm into jazz, I'm into music. I'm not a particularly good player, but I just love music. So I'll often phone up top players and say, "Oh, yeah, would you give us a lesson?" And they go, "Yeah, okay," because they're as skint as everyone else. So I think turning up is important. Giving back is important. That thing about observe, receive, deliver, I think that's if you can't train for some reason, why don't you go and watch training? If you can't do something, can you help others? So and then you keep in the loop. I have to say that martial arts is the best thing that ever happened to me. The people I meet in martial arts are the most steady, balanced people on the whole. There's a few lunatics out there, but the most balanced, easygoing people that I've ever met. So I think if you want to get your kids into anything, give them this, even early on for 5 years. It was set them up for life, because it gives them discipline, gives them that idea of you have to repeat, that idea that you have to turn up. Achievement, discipline. Honestly, it's saved my life. And I've been all over the world. I've got friends who are billionaires. I've got friends who are paupers. And all because of this. And I've taught rock bands. I've met pop stars, met film and movie stars. So I've tasted lots of tastes. And then you realise, well, just as I said earlier, once your belly's full, you're happy, aren't you? So I'm not sure if that's any deep philosophical point, but
it's spot on. What the podcast has done is given me an opportunity to just do a wee bit for the community, actually, as far as these conversations with people like yourself. And it's like that Library of Alexandria type thing. I want to preserve your thoughts. I want to preserve Steve Rowe's thoughts. I want to, had Gavin Mulholland on the other week.
Gavin's great. We don't often, but we occasionally meet each other on the road where I'm going off to teach somewhere, he's going to teach that, and we meet at some cafe, on the motorway. He's great. He's old school, isn't he?
So it's just this has just given me a wonderful opportunity to.
And he's a good flute player as well, and he plays the flute like I play the flute, and he's a good guitarist, I think. So I think lots of those top people are quite multi-disciplined, aren't they? Because once you know one thing, you can learn other things, can't you? It's the same skill. But it's great. It gets people out of the hood. People who are going to join gangs and things like that. Do this instead. Do this instead. You live. And who's to know? You might teach Robert Pattinson or the equivalent, just because you do your passion well. And he might say, "Come to Hollywood, do this or whatever." But you get a taste other aspects of life that you wouldn't ever touch, keeping in your little bubble, and go to competitions, meet people, because then 30 years later, 40 years later, it all comes back, and you get paid back.
Yep.
Over and over.
I think one thing about the martial arts is, and I've said this for many years, it never lets you down in lots of different facets, and it gives you back much more than you ever give it. It really does.
Yeah, and also if you go on to teach, you get the ability to help change thousands of people's lives. Totally change them, take them from there to there. And how many people can get to do any of that? So it's great.
Perfect.
Doreen, thank you for today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Honor. Thank you.
And thank you everyone having a listen. I hope it was interesting. Yeah,
it absolutely was, sir. Okay, thank you.
Take care. Lots of love. Take care.
God bless you. Bye bye.